Never say, you have said. Always say, I have understood. What I understood is this. What you meant, I have no idea. No? And actually, to be precise, what I remember about what I have understood. Because actually, what I have understood and what I remember after are two different things also. Huh? So, everything that we listen to it, we perceive it through the filter of our own self. We are unable to understand something independently of the education we received, the experiences we had, the social, cultural context in which we were born, our own body, and everything else. We perceive reality through the filter of ourselves. No? If I start saying the same thing in another language, no? Pernange pöke tone din so labina, nga keja shedo keram so khande raj kogiore. Chidan cheba ina nganso keja koya de sigrang kogumare draji te dradila tene ani nganso dila tempa jarne chidan nganso draw tabala tene ani nganso tenda dige kogurwa. I have said, if you understood or not, it's not my problem. I have just explained the same thing in Tibetan. As if you speak to me in Dutch. For me, it makes no much difference. Like, it will be a similar experience. So, what happens is that I had thoughts, I had concepts, I transmitted that concepts, but I used sounds that most of you don't have the convention to understand the meaning. No? So, whenever we listen to something, yes, we listen to the sounds that the other person is making, and we are lucky enough to have conventions of meanings and sounds, but still it's never the same. Because what I mean when I say love and what you mean when you understand love necessarily is not the same thing. It's like one time I was in Rome and I took a taxi and I was alone, and then the taxi driver looked at me and he said, "What are you dressed like that, you know?" And then I tried to explain to him and he didn't understand so much. And then suddenly he looked at me and he said, "But do you believe in death?" I said, "That's a strange question." Then I thought the answer would be too obvious. So I asked him, "What do you mean by death?" If someone asks, if I come to anyone and say, "Do you believe in death?" Or I have a different concept of what death means, otherwise the answer to anyone should be yes, right? So I asked him, "What do you mean by death?" And then he looked to me even more strangely. And then I just said, if you mean by death, that is the final end of any existence, then I don't believe in death. If by death you mean that it's the separation between body and a more subtle aspect of mind that you may call in different ways, and there is a continuation after that separation, then I believe in death. It depends what we mean by it. And very often when we communicate, we use the same words with different meanings. We think it's the same concept, but actually it's not. That's why when we study Buddhist philosophy and we do a lot of dialectics, the first thing in a discussion is give the definition of the words. If we are going to talk about death, plus define death. If we are going to talk about sickness, define sickness. Then most of the debates, half of the debate is the debate about the definition. Once we have agreed on the definition, then we can talk about the subject. And very often, once we agreed in the definition, there is not so much to talk after that. So that's already a very good step. Because very often, a lot of discussions happen because we think that we are talking about the same thing when actually we are not. We use the same word for different concepts. So it's clear that as I talk, you listen to your own understanding and not to what I'm saying, right? And when we see, what do we see? Shapes, persons, objects, or we see colors and shapes only? What comes to our eyes? Do we see objects and people and things, or we just see colors and shapes? If we analyze, we see colors and shapes, right? It's a bit shocking when we really think about it seriously. No? When I think that I'm not seeing you, I'm seeing colors and shapes which I project as being a person. I attribute meaning. In the same way as I was speaking in Tibetan and you didn't have probably any particular meaning to apply to that, when we see shapes of something that we don't have a reference, we are not able to apply a particular meaning to it. Because the way how our mind mostly works is when we were a small baby, which is one of the most important times in the life of anyone. We see things, we listen, we touch, we smell, and we create our own data bank, in which basically we accumulate experiences and concepts. And later we just recognize things. We see things and we apply the experience of the past into it. Okay? What I want to say, because we could go on the whole day about the subject. The main point is that any situation that we live, any object that we perceive it inevitably through ourself as a filter. What happens when we wake up joyfully? It happens sometimes, no, that we are happy. Whatever happens somehow is good. And when we are sad and we look to things, we don't see them so well. How much our judgment of the situations is influenced by our emotional states. Have you ever watched the same movie 2 times in a different moment of your life? I have done it a few times, and they are different movies. Like I have had one time, there was a period in which any movie which I saw, I was emotionally touched. And I felt very emotional. Any movie I saw actually during that time. Afterwards I was observing. Then after some time I came a few years later, oh, you know that movie is so beautiful here and there. Okay, let's watch it. And then you watch and you say, poof, nothing there. But I had a completely different memory. It's not that in between that years came the director and changed the scenes of the movie. It's because I have changed. So, whenever we perceive anything, it's like if we are making a picture of that moment. And we apply into that picture many filters. Whenever we take a picture, we choose an angle through which we look at a certain reality. No? The same object, if it's pictured by different people, we will have different pictures because we look through different angles, we put different lenses, we apply different filters, and we have different pictures. That's what happens when different people look at the same situation, the same object. The problem is that we are not aware that we perceive reality through the filter of ourselves, and we think that what we perceive is actual reality. When actually we are completely incapable of perceiving anything independently of the filter of our own selves.